Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It was an insignificant detail that initially seemed trivial, and David barely paid attention to it. He had left town for work, as he occasionally did, and, as usual, shared with Megan, his wife, the detailed itinerary of his trip. In turn, Megan had given him her schedule. After so many years of marriage, this had become routine for both of them. David, known for his cheerful and friendly personality, worked as a negotiator and problem solver in his company. Although he didn't travel often, a few business trips per year were part of his routine. This particular trip was scheduled to last an entire week, and he didn't expect to return until Saturday. He planned to take a 10:15 p.m. flight that night, arriving late after midnight. Not wanting to disturb Megan, he insisted she not pick him up from the airport. He intended to take a shuttle that would drop him home around 2:30 a.m. on Sunday. However, on Thursday morning, an unexpected turn of events occurred. The negotiations he had been involved in concluded much earlier than expected. The deal was signed before noon, and his business partners had to rush off to attend to other matters. Seeing the opportunity to return home early, David rescheduled his flight. By 2:45 p.m., he was already seated on the plane, ready to fly back. During the flight, David decided to call Megan to let her know he'd be home earlier than planned. Using the in-flight phone, he dialed her mobile, but, as expected, she didn't answer. She was at work. Determined to reach her, he started searching his briefcase for her office number and called there. "Jensen, Sharon and Anderson, how may I direct your call?" greeted the secretary. "Hi, can I speak to Jennifer?" David asked, referring to Megan's secretary, who usually took his calls. "I'm sorry, but Jennifer won't be in today or tomorrow. Is there something I can help you with?" the secretary responded, maintaining a friendly tone. Slightly confused, David said, "In that case, may I speak with Mrs. Conroy? May I ask who's calling?" The secretary's voice became a bit more cautious. "It's her husband," David replied. After a brief pause, the secretary returned to the conversation. "I'm afraid Mrs. Conroy is currently busy. I'm not sure when she'll be available. Would you like to leave a message?" David hesitated for a moment. "No, that's fine. I'll talk to her at home tonight. Just let her know I called." He hung up the phone, but the conversation left him feeling uneasy. Only about half an hour later did he realize what had been bothering him. Megan had told him the night before that she would be in the office all day. While it was possible she was busy or in a client meeting, something about Jennifer's absence troubled him. Jennifer rarely missed work unless Megan did as well, and even then, it was usually planned in advance. The fact that neither Megan nor Jennifer were in the office seemed odd to him. When David landed, the flight was precisely on time. By 7:30 p.m. he was home, but the house was dark. It was unusual for Megan not to be home. She typically returned earlier than him. He began his usual routine, unpacking his suitcase, tossing his clothes into the laundry basket, and changing into something more comfortable. By 9 p.m., with no sign of Megan, he decided to make himself a simple grilled cheese sandwich. Settling in front of the TV, he tried to distract himself, but the anxiety continued to build. Could something have happened to her? If there had been an emergency, surely someone would have informed him. Unable to shake the growing concern, David began pacing around the house. He tried calling her mobile again, but this time the call went straight to voicemail. Her phone was turned off. Strange, he thought. Why would she have it turned off? By 10 p.m., his worry had turned into real anxiety. Just then, his phone rang. He quickly answered, feeling a wave of relief at hearing Megan's voice on the other end. "I was starting to worry," she said with a hint of concern in her voice. "As usual, I called the hotel after dinner, and they told me you had already checked out." "Is everything going smoothly?" she asked. "Yes, just a few changes in plans," he replied. "Where are you now?" he continued. "At home, actually. I just finished cleaning up the kitchen. It's unusually quiet in the house today," he said, looking around the empty space. "You will come back on Sunday as we agreed, right?" she asked, hope evident in her voice. "Absolutely. "I'll be here all day on Sunday," he assured her. "We moved all the meetings to the company's main office this morning. You can reach me on my mobile if needed," he added, his gaze lingering on the dimly lit, silent kitchen. The absence of her presence weighed on him, and the dirty dishes from dinner were stacked high in the sink. "Did anything strange happen today? I tried calling you at the office this afternoon," he pressed. "No, not really. I was probably talking to John Sanchez at the time," she replied, sounding distracted. "John's been helping me sort out the Melrose account all week," she explained with a tone David couldn't quite decipher. "Honestly, I owe him for it." "Well, my love, once we wrap up the account, I think they'll offer me a partnership. Mr. Jensen practically confirmed it." Megan's excitement was evident. "That's just fantastic. We'll have to celebrate," he said, though his words lacked enthusiasm. "Sorry I can't be with you today to start celebrating." "Don't worry. We'll celebrate when you come back on Sunday," she reassured him. "Please don't be late," she added softly. "I miss you. The bed feels so empty without you." They talked a little more, mostly about household matters, before ending the call. After hanging up, David sat in silence, the weight of Megan's lies pressing on him. A knot of nausea formed in his stomach, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. Until that evening, he had always believed their marriage was solid and their love unshakable. Now, he wasn't so sure. David couldn't sleep for a long time, tossing and turning, trying to find peace in the same bed Megan had described as lonely. He finally drifted off, but by 7 in the morning, he was awake again, staring at the ceiling, feeling empty. By 10, reality hit him. Megan wasn't planning to come home. He picked up the phone and called her office. When the secretary answered instead of Jennifer, he casually asked, "Can I speak with Mrs. Conroy?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Conroy is unavailable at the moment," the secretary replied. "That's all right, it's not urgent. I'll try again Monday morning," he said, keeping his tone steady. "Great! Mrs. Conroy will be in the office at 9 a.m. on Monday. You can call then," the secretary added cheerfully. David had heard enough. Hanging up the phone, he gathered the necessary information from Megan's files, got into the car, and drove away. They rarely used this SUV, saving it for trips to the mountains or towing the camping trailer. No one in their social circle knew about the vehicle. Leaving his sedan behind, he drove to Megan's office. Slowly circling the parking lot, he confirmed his suspicions. Her car wasn't there. His heart sank as he left the parking lot and headed to the address in her files, which led to John Sanchez's house. The home was in an upscale neighborhood, surrounded by tall pines and hidden behind a tall, red brick wall. As he slowly drove past, he spotted Megan's car parked by the garage, out of sight from the main driveway. His vision blurred with emotion, and he pulled over, forcing himself to calm down. After a few minutes, he wiped away his tears. David continued driving, heading downtown where he stopped at a small cafe for breakfast. It was already 11:50 a.m. when he sat down and ordered Belgian waffles and tea. His stomach was too upset for coffee, and he wasn't sure he could eat the waffles. But he forced himself to take slow, deliberate bites, finishing the meal in an hour. He paid and left the cafe, still feeling a heavy weight on his heart. Unable to resist, he drove past Sanchez's house again. Megan's car was still in the same spot. He aimlessly drove around the city for another hour before returning once more. Her car hadn't moved. Resigned, David returned home, his mind swirling with thoughts of betrayal. As time passed, he reflected on the broken parts of their marriage and the life he once cherished. The day slipped away in agonizing, empty contemplation. He couldn't shake one question. Would he ever find a way to smile again? He was so exhausted that he didn't have the energy to prepare a proper meal, instead snacking on whatever he could find, snacks, fruit juices, soda, whenever he felt hungry. His otherwise uneventful evening was interrupted by a phone call from Megan at 10:45 p.m., just as he was about to go to bed. She once again complained about something she had mentioned many times before, telling him how large and empty their bed felt without him. David quietly smirked, trying to mask the fatigue in his voice, and replied that she really didn't understand how lonely a big bed could feel. Puzzled, Megan began to ask him what he meant. David brushed off her question, acknowledging her loneliness and agreeing that it must be hard to sleep alone. He reassured her of his love before ending the call. However, as the night slowly approached midnight, he still couldn't bring himself to get into bed. Thoughts swirled in his head that he couldn't quiet. Did she truly love him? Was she punishing him for something he didn't remember? No, it wasn't about him. It was about her. But what was it? What was bothering her? And most importantly, could he fix it? Was he even capable of fixing it? He spent the night tossing and turning, once again unable to sleep. When morning came, he still felt as restless as he had the night before. By 7 a.m., he sat in the dimly lit living room, the curtains tightly drawn. Around 9 a.m., he heard a familiar sound, Megan's car pulling into the garage. A few minutes later, Megan entered through the door connecting the garage to the kitchen, carrying a small bag of belongings. From his dark leather chair, David silently observed her. She was wearing a plaid skirt and a sleeveless red blouse, the top buttons undone. Her face looked calm, almost content, as she moved through the kitchen. Around her neck hung the necklace he had given her on their 5th anniversary, its soft gleam catching the rare rays of light that made it into the room. As she passed the sink, she stopped abruptly, her gaze landing on the pile of dirty dishes. David hadn't bothered to clean up after breakfast, or even put away the glasses from the night before. Her eyes shifted to the kettle still on the stove, water inside heating up. Megan's face showed signs of concern as she scanned the kitchen. She moved cautiously, her steps slow and deliberate, as the dim light enveloped the room. She stopped at the entrance to the dining room, her eyes taking in the heavy curtains covering the sliding glass doors that led to the patio. Her eyes seemed to search for something in the room. Finally, she set her bag down on a chair and hesitantly stepped into the living room, heading toward the fireplace. Picking up the fire poker, she turned toward the room, and her gaze finally landed on David. He sat silently, lifting a cup of tea to his lips. Megan gasped, her hand flying to her chest in shock. "Oh my God, David, you scared me. When did you come home?" Her voice trembled, a mixture of fear and surprise. David let the silence hang in the air, the tension growing. Although only a few moments had passed, it felt like an eternity. When he finally spoke, his voice, once warm, was now cold and distant. "A few days ago." Megan's knees buckled, and she collapsed into the chair across from him, her face frozen in shock. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call? Where were you?" she stammered. David took another slow sip of tea, his tone cold and devoid of emotion. "I called, Thursday afternoon. You weren't home, and you weren't at the office. Jennifer wasn't there either." He paused, letting the silence fill the space between them once again before continuing. "I was here, sitting in this chair when you called. I spent the night in that big, empty bed you were talking about." Outside, life went on. A car drove by, children argued in the distance, and a dog barked. Inside, the living room felt suffocating, the heavy blinds and curtains barely letting any light in. The only other sound was Megan's quiet sobs. Her crying was barely audible as David took another sip of tea, his voice remaining impassive. "Somehow, I doubt the bed you've been sleeping in the past 2 nights has been that empty. Don't you think it's time to tell me what's really going on, Megan? Can you explain what happened?" Megan's sobs grew louder, her hands covering her face as she shook her head in denial. "David, I love you," she sobbed. "It's not about us, David. Please try to understand that. I felt like I had no other choice. This isn't a reflection on us or my love for you." David stared at her, his face frozen in shock. "How can you say that, Megan? How can something that feels like betrayal not affect our relationship?" "I didn't feel like I had a choice," Megan whispered. "John helped me when I was in a terrible situation. I had to repay him somehow, but that doesn't change how I feel about you. My love for you remains the same." David stayed silent for a while. He slowly took a sip of his tea, allowing the silence to stretch between them. Then, after a pause, he stood up and asked calmly, "Do you need anything from the kitchen?" Megan just shook her head without lifting her gaze. Returning to his seat, David leaned forward, his expression intense. "Tell me, why did you feel so indebted to Sanchez that you broke your promises to me? Did he demand something in return for helping with the Melrose case?" Megan's eyes widened in surprise. "No, David. It wasn't like that at all. He didn't force me, and he didn't expect anything in return. He helped because he cared, because he knew I wasn't at fault. He would never have asked for something like that." David took a deep breath, rubbing his temples in frustration. "Then why, Megan? Why did you offer him something so personal if he didn't ask for it? What am I missing?" "It wasn't like that," Megan insisted again. "I've told you before, this isn't about us. I felt like he deserved something for his kindness." David's face darkened. "Did I fail you somehow? Is this something I did that pushed you to this?" "No!" Megan's voice trembled, rising. "I've told you so many times it's not your fault. I had to find a way to thank him for what he did. His help with Melrose wasn't just for me, it was for both of us. I wasn't thinking about myself, it wasn't about my feelings for you." The room fell into silence again before David spoke slowly. "Megan, if you're so defensive about how I'm describing it, does that mean that you enjoyed it?" The silence that followed was almost unbearable. After a long pause, David broke it again. "Do you remember how I always told you that I belonged only to you, and you told me the same? How many times did you promise that you were mine, and I never needed to ask? Do you remember how deeply I believed we were meant for each other?" Megan's voice trembled as she replied, "David, I still believe that. I belong to you." David's tone was frighteningly calm, though his voice wavered slightly. "Then how can you claim that this has nothing to do with us, Megan? You gave him the most precious thing, the thing that meant everything to me, and now you've shared it with someone else." Megan's face twisted in grief, but David didn't stop. His voice was filled with disbelief as he continued, "You say this man didn't even ask for what you gave him? By your own words, he didn't expect it. Did you have to persuade him? And then you say this has nothing to do with me?" Tears streamed down Megan's cheeks and she sobbed, "David, this doesn't change who I am. I love you, I'm still yours. Nothing has changed." David's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he spoke, his voice barely controlled. "Megan, everything changes us. Every choice we make, everything that happens to us leaves a mark. You spent 2 nights with another man, sharing something that should only exist between people who love each other." His voice trembled, and he paused to regain his composure. "How many nights, Megan? Only 2? Or were there more?" The silence that followed was suffocating, David's words hanging in the air as he struggled to keep his emotions in check. David's voice became cold and distant again. "God help me, Megan. I can't stop thinking about how many others might have had what should have belonged only to me. You say you belong to me, but without realizing it, you expose yourself." Megan shook her head sharply, her body trembling as deep sobs took over. She couldn't respond with words, only denying his accusations through her tears. Her posture seemed to collapse inward. Her shoulders slumped, her elbows rested heavily on her knees, and her face was buried in her hands, with her hair falling over her face. Time seemed to drag on slowly. David remained motionless, lost in his thoughts, while his wife seemed to shrink further into the chair opposite him. The room was filled with soft, dim light, and the only sounds came from outside, neighbors enjoying the sunny day. Inside, only Megan's muffled sobs broke the silence, until the clock on the mantel softly chimed noon. "Megan," David spoke again, this time in a softer tone, "I don't know where we go from here. I love you just as much as I did when I left last week. But I feel lost. You keep saying your betrayal has nothing to do with me, but you don't understand how heavy what you've done really is." He paused, letting the silence fill the space between them before continuing. "My trust in you is shattered, and I have no idea how to rebuild it, if that's even possible. And if you're hinting that I should betray you in return to balance things out, then we're already done. First of all, if my loyalty means so little to you, it shows how little you value me. And secondly, 2 wrongs don't make a right. 2 wrongs only make things worse," he added quietly. He slowly rose from his chair, carefully placed his empty cup on the mantel, and walked toward the dining room. Pulling the curtains aside, he gazed at their perfect sunlit backyard. His next words were barely audible, and Megan had to strain to hear them. "Megan, I want to shake you so hard that your teeth rattle." He sighed heavily. "I never wanted to hurt a woman, especially you, my wife, the woman I love. And now, meeting with John Sanchez is a bad idea, no matter how much you insist that you started everything with him." Megan quietly sobbed, perhaps in protest, but David continued. "You say it wasn't his idea, but now that he has you without putting in any effort, do you think he won't expect it again?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "No matter what you say to him, he sees you as available. Maybe he doesn't think you're available to everyone, but he knows you're available to him. It's easy for him now, and soon he'll stop." This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. My eyes slowly opened, struggling to adjust as my consciousness lazily returned to my body. The room was enveloped in shadows, with only the faint glow of the bedside lamp piercing the gloom. My limbs felt incredibly heavy, as if gravity had doubled its pull, and my throat was dry and irritated. How long had I been unconscious? Gradually, my senses sharpened, and strange sounds began to penetrate the silence of the room. Soft moans and the rhythmic creaking of a bed echoed faintly around me. Confused, I tried to turn towards the source of the sounds, but my muscles refused to obey, stiff and aching from prolonged inactivity. "Michael," whispered a voice I knew all too well, and a chill ran down my spine. My vision remained blurry, but I forced myself to focus, staring in the direction from where the voice came. What I saw made the blood freeze in my veins. Standing beside my hospital bed was Patricia, my wife of 45 years, completely naked, straddling a man half her age. I blinked, unable to believe my eyes, hoping this was just a hallucination caused by the medication. But as my vision cleared, the scene before me only grew sharper and more real. Patricia, with her wrinkled hands, was gripping the shoulders of Dr. Michael, our 35-year-old doctor. Her face was contorted with pleasure, utterly oblivious to my presence. I wanted to look away, close my eyes, and pretend this wasn't happening, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed, forced to witness this nightmare. The sight of Patricia's sagging breasts, which once brought me comfort, now filled me with disgust. Every sound of her pleasure stabbed my heart like a knife. How long had this been going on? How many times had they been together while I lay here helpless and unaware? I tried to scream, to make any sound to stop it, but my voice failed me. My throat was too dry, silenced for weeks of not speaking. All I could do was lie there, motionless, paralyzed, watching as my wife, my partner, betrayed me in the most painful way imaginable. Patricia's movements grew more erratic. Her breathing quickened. "I'm close," she panted. "Don't stop, doctor." Something inside me broke. The fire of rage, which had long smoldered within me, finally ignited. Suddenly I found my voice. A deep, hoarse scream erupted from me, shattering the oppressive silence of the room with my raw fury and despair. Patricia froze, her eyes widening as she realized I had woken up and was watching them. Dr. Michael, gripped by panic, scrambled to free himself, entangling himself in the sheets and Patricia in his haste. In his frantic attempts, he lost his balance and tumbled to the floor, his pants still wrapped around his ankles. "Alexander!" Patricia gasped, clutching her chest in shock. She leapt off the bed, her face pale, her whole body trembling with fear. I can explain," she stammered, but I knew that no explanation could fix what I had just witnessed. I wanted to leap out of bed, to grab her and make her understand the depth of her betrayal, but my body refused to comply, still too weak from weeks of inactivity. All I could do was glare at her with the hatred that burned in my eyes. Patricia staggered back, barely able to stand. "Please," she begged, her voice shaking. "It's not what you think." Before she could say anything more, she suddenly clutched her chest in pain. Her face twisted in agony, her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor. Dr. Michael, still half-dressed and fumbling to pull up his pants, rushed to her side. "Patricia!" he shouted, dropping to his knees next to her. I watched in stunned silence as the doctor began performing chest compressions, his medical training kicking in despite the absurdity of the situation. Here was the man who had just been with my wife, now desperately trying to save her life, while I lay there, helpless and unable to intervene. "Come on, Patricia!" Michael shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "Don't die on me now!" But as I watched the scene unfold, it became painfully clear. Patricia was not coming back. Her lifeless body lay motionless on the cold hospital floor, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. A heart attack had claimed her swiftly and mercilessly. It seemed cruel, but also a fitting end, considering the depth of her betrayal. Michael was still desperately trying to revive her when the door to my room flew open. A group of nurses and doctors rushed in, likely drawn by my scream. They froze, horror etched on their faces as they took in the scene. "Oh my God!" one of the senior nurses whispered, instinctively covering her mouth with her hand. Then chaos erupted. Several staff members rushed to Patricia, replacing Michael's frantic efforts, while others surrounded me, checking my condition and bombarding me with questions I lacked the strength to answer. Through all the commotion, I kept my eyes on Michael. He had stepped back from Patricia's body, his face pale, reflecting guilt and fear. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I realized he grasped the full magnitude of what had just occurred. His career, reputation, and future crumbled in an instant. As the medical team desperately worked to save Patricia, one of the senior nurses quietly covered her body with a sheet, but the damage was already done. Any attempt to restore dignity felt futile. The shame of the moment hung heavily in the air, offering no chance of redemption. The anger that had once consumed me had now hardened into a cold, bitter lump lodged deep in my chest. Patricia was gone, her final betrayal forever seared into my memory, leaving this as our last shared scene. And Michael, standing there with trembling hands, his pants hastily fastened, but his shirt still unbuttoned, looked every bit the guilty adulterer that he was. No one spoke to me directly. Perhaps they didn't know what to say, or maybe they were afraid I might reveal the truth. Yet the sidelong glances and hushed whispers spoke volumes. This scandal would echo throughout the entire hospital. As the gravity of the situation settled over the room, I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me. Patricia's death had taken with it a lifetime of memories, both good and bad, but her absence left me with a grim resolve. I looked over at Michael, who was already being interrogated by a stern hospital administrator in the corner. Our eyes met again, and I saw the fear flicker across his face. Perfect. He had every reason to be afraid. Though I felt physically weak, my mind had never been sharper. Lying there on the hospital bed, I made a silent vow to myself. This wasn't the end, far from it. Michael had taken everything from me, and I would make sure he paid for it, one way or another. As I lay in that hospital room, my thoughts kept returning to the events of the past few days. The image of Patricia with that young doctor was burned into my mind, a painful reminder of her betrayal. My fists clenched involuntarily, tugging at the IV in my arm. A knock on the door pulled me from the whirlpool of my thoughts. "Come in," I rasped, my voice still rough from prolonged silence. Harold and Beatrice entered the room, their faces a mixture of concern and barely contained anger. My children, my allies in this nightmare. "Dad," Harold said, his voice trembling with emotion, "how are you holding up?" I let out a bitter laugh. "What do you think?" I responded with bitterness. Beatrice came closer, gently taking my hand. "We're here for you, Dad, whatever you need." I squeezed her hand, feeling grateful for their support. "What I need," I said, my voice growing firmer, "is justice. Michael has to answer for what he's done." Harold nodded, his jaw clenched with determination. "We've already been discussing it. We think there's a strong case, against Michael and against the hospital." My interest piqued, and I raised an eyebrow. "Tell me more." "First of all, there's the moral damage," Harold continued, slipping into lawyer mode. "The affair itself is a violation of professional ethics, And then there are the circumstances of Mom's death. We have a solid case for negligence. All right, I growled, my voice full of rage. I want him destroyed. I want the whole world to know what he did. Beatrice shifted uncomfortably beside me, feeling uneasy. Dad, are you sure it's wise to go public with this? She asked cautiously. This could affect all of us. I turned to her, fury blazing in my eyes. Beatrice, your mother died in another man's arms. Our family is already disgraced. I took a deep breath, struggling to contain my anger. The least we can do is take Michael down with us. She flinched at my harsh words, but after a pause she nodded, though her face remained troubled. You're right. It's just, all of this is so awful. I know, sweetheart, I said, my voice softening slightly, but we can't let him walk away unpunished. Harold cleared his throat. I've already started preparing the paperwork. We can file it as soon as you're out of here. Good, I nodded. And what about the hospital? What are they doing about it? They're trying to control the situation, Harold replied. They've already reached out to us, offering a quiet settlement. I told them we're not interested in keeping this quiet. Damn right, I snapped. People need to know who they're trusting with their lives. Beatrice squeezed my hand, her eyes full of worry but also determination. We're with you, Dad, all the way. I looked at my children, and despite the filthiness of the situation, a wave of pride surged within me. Thank you, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. I couldn't do this without you. Harold's phone buzzed, distracting him. His face darkened as he glanced at the screen. It's the hospital's lawyer again. They're pushing hard for a meeting. Ignoring the pain in my back, I pushed myself up in bed. Set it up. I want to look them in the eye when we tell them we're seeing this through. Harold nodded, already typing a message. I'll arrange it for tomorrow. Are you sure you're ready for this? I met his gaze, unwavering. Son, I've never been more ready in my life. After my children left to handle their tasks, I sank back into the hospital bed, and the rage that had been simmering inside me now blazed into a full inferno. Michael had stolen Patricia from me, and I was not going to let him walk away unscathed. This was war, and I was prepared for battle. A few days later, the sudden commotion in the hallway disrupted the usual quiet of the hospital. The sounds of hurried footsteps and muffled voices caught my attention. I frowned, trying to make sense of what was happening. The door burst open and Harold rushed in, his face contorted with anger and panic. Beatrice followed close behind, her wide eyes filled with shock. Dad, Harold said tensely, have you seen the news? I frowned in confusion. What news? Beatrice came closer and gently placed her hand on mine. Dad, it's everywhere. Harold pulled out his phone and quickly swiped across the screen. He handed it to me and my stomach dropped as I read the screaming headline. Elderly woman dies during affair with doctor, caught in the act by husband. The words blurred before me, and a wave of nausea hit me like a punch to the gut. What the hell is this? I snarled, clenching my fists. It's all over the media, Harold said grimly. Someone leaked the story. It's gone viral, and reporters are swarming the hospital trying to get details. A fresh wave of fury swept over me, making my hands tremble. The betrayal had erupted into a public scandal, and there was no turning back now. I closed my eyes, trying to cope with the unbearable weight of this new disaster. As if Patricia's betrayal wasn't enough, seeing her die nearly destroyed me. And now our humiliation had become public, exposed for all to judge. Beatrice quietly spoke beside me. The press wants an interview. They're asking for our side of the story. My eyes flew open, and indignation flared within me. Our side, I replied, my voice cold but resolute. I'll make sure they hear it. Harold shifted nervously. Dad, are you sure this is the right decision? The right decision? I interrupted him, my voice rising in irritation. That doctor took everything from me, my wife, my trust, my dignity. And now he's disgraced our name in front of everyone. No, this can't just be swept under the rug. We will speak out, and the world will learn the truth about Dr. Michael. Beatrice squeezed my hand in a gesture of support. If that's what you want, Dad, we'll stand with you, she assured me. I nodded, feeling my resolve harden. Help me out of this bed. We need to make a statement. The following hours passed in a whirlwind of preparation. With Harold's help, I was settled into a wheelchair, and we made our way to the hospital lobby, where a crowd of journalists and cameras were already waiting. The bright flashes of the cameras blinded me, and the flood of questions began immediately, but I remained steadfast. This was my moment to seek justice. "Mr. Thompson," a voice called out, "can you tell us what happened?" I took a deep breath, calming myself, and looked directly into one of the cameras. I woke up after several weeks of illness to find out that my wife of 45 years had been involved with a doctor half her age, the very doctor who was supposed to be taking care of me. Instead, he took advantage of her vulnerability and destroyed my family. Questions bombarded me relentlessly. How did I feel? Did I suspect anything? What was going through my mind at that moment? I answered each question, my voice growing more confident. I felt utterly betrayed. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I had no idea what was happening. I trusted my wife, and I trusted this doctor. Both of them shattered that trust in the most painful way. Harold stepped forward, his legal instincts kicking in. "We will be filing a lawsuit against Dr. Michael and the hospital. Their incompetence and breach of professional ethics directly led to this tragedy, and they must be held accountable." Beatrice, her eyes filled with tears, added, "Our family is mourning the loss of our mother, and now we have to endure public disgrace on top of that. It's not fair. We deserve justice." As the questions continued to pour in, I noticed movement at the edge of the crowd. The reporters shifted, and through the parting throng, I saw him, Dr. Michael, standing there in shock. Our eyes met, and a wave of rage surged through me. I almost rose from my chair. "You!" I shouted, pointing a trembling finger. "You've ruined everything!" The reporters turned, cameras zooming in on the disgraced doctor. He looked bewildered, like a deer caught in the headlights, clearly unprepared for this confrontation. "Dr. Michael!" one of the reporters yelled. "What do you have to say in response to these accusations?" He stammered, all his previous confidence gone. I never meant for this to happen. It was a terrible mistake." "Mistake?" I hissed, my voice dripping with hatred. "You think seducing my wife and betraying your oath as a doctor was just a mistake? You didn't just disgrace your profession, you humiliated humanity itself." Reporters flooded the area, bombarding us with frantic questions. I catch Michael's gaze. His eyes are filled with pure terror. He realizes that everything he has worked for is collapsing right before him. "My career," he whispers to himself, his voice trembling with disbelief. "What have I done?" "You've destroyed your own life," I say, my voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. "And I will make sure you never practice medicine again. You will answer for your actions, Dr. Michael." As if on cue, a group of grim officials in dark suits pushes through the crowd. One of them steps forward, showing his ID. "Dr. Michael Brown, we are from the State Medical Board. You need to come with us immediately. There is an ongoing investigation into your actions, and your presence is required." Michael's face turns pale, and for a moment I think he might faint. But then his shoulders slump in a gesture of defeat. He doesn't resist, allowing the officials to lead him away in silence. Sensing the next chapter of this drama unfolding, the reporters surge forward, eager to capture the moment. But Harold and Beatrice step in front, shielding me from the madness. "That's enough for today," Harold says sternly. "My father needs rest. There will be no more comments." As they wheel me back to my room, my emotions whirl in a chaotic storm. Anger still boils inside me, and the bitterness of a life lost gnaws at my soul. And yet, despite all of this, I feel a grim satisfaction. The truth has been revealed, and Michael is finally facing the consequences of his actions. Although I have lost Patricia, I refuse to let her betrayal and Michael's deceit destroy me. I will see this through, no matter the cost. As we reach my room, I glance at Harold and Beatrice. The same determination burns in their eyes as in mine. We are in this together, and we will emerge from this battle stronger. The media circus does not die down in the following days. Every time I turn on the television or glance at the newspaper, our story dominates the headlines. It's strange to see our personal suffering play out in front of the entire public, but I remind myself that it's necessary. This is the price of justice. Harold keeps me updated on the legal situation. The hospital is trying to settle the case out of court, he tells me one afternoon, barely containing his frustration. They're afraid of bad publicity, he adds through clenched teeth. I shake my head in disbelief. They should have thought of that before they hired someone like Michael. No, we're going to trial. I want everything on record, I say with unwavering resolve. Beatrice, who had been quietly arranging flowers next to me, looks up, worry clouding her face. Are you sure, Dad? This will bring everything into the open. It will be tough. I take her hand and squeeze it. I'm sure. We have nothing to hide. We are the ones who were wronged, and the world needs to know. As time goes on, more details about the scandal emerge. Michael's career is effectively over. No hospital wants to hire him, and the medical board's investigation is in full swing. Rumors circulate that his license will soon be revoked. One evening, while flipping through TV channels, I stumble upon a news segment about him. The once confident doctor now looks broken, avoiding reporters outside his home. Dr. Michael, one reporter calls out, how do you respond to accusations that you violated your Hippocratic oath? Michael stops, his posture radiating utter defeat. For a moment, I almost feel pity for him. Almost. I made a terrible mistake, he mumbles, barely audible. I let personal desires cloud my judgment. I hurt people. I destroyed lives, including my own. He falls silent, his face etched with deep regret. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want the Thompson family to know how deeply sorry I am. I snort and turn off the television. Too little, too late, I mutter under my breath. The next morning, Harold enters my room, a note of satisfaction in his voice. The medical board has reached their decision, he says quietly, but with unmistakable resolve. Michael's medical license was revoked, permanently stripping him of his ability to practice medicine. I nod slightly, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Another person in a position of power capable of causing harm has been removed. After a long pause, Beatrice finally spoke. I heard he's planning to leave town, trying to avoid the shame. My voice hardens in response. He can run all he wants, but he'll never escape what he did. It will haunt him for the rest of his life. Over time, the media frenzy starts to fade as attention shifts to new scandals and tragedies. But even if the headlines change, the consequences remain. I receive letters from others who have suffered similar betrayals, expressing gratitude for our courage in revealing the truth. Discussions around medical ethics begin to gain momentum, sparking debates on the responsibilities doctors owe to their patients. This is far from a clean and simple ending. Patricia is still gone. Our family is still broken. But as I leave the hospital for the last time, a sense of closure gradually settles over me. We survived the chaos, uncovered the truth, and achieved justice. Harold and Beatrice help me into the car, and I steal a final glance at the hospital disappearing in the rearview mirror. Now the soft morning light streams through the curtains of my new apartment, flooding the living room with a warm glow. I sit in my favorite chair, quietly sipping coffee, enjoying the peace. It's been a year since I left that hospital, a whole year since my world collapsed. The memories of that day are still vivid, though the pain has dulled over time. I hear a knock on the door, followed by the familiar sound of a key turning in the lock. Dad, are you up? Harold calls as he enters the room. I'm here, son, I reply, setting down my coffee. Harold walks in, looking sharp in his suit, ready for the workday but always finding time to check on me. Behind him comes Beatrice with a paper bag, the smell of fresh pastries wafting through the air. Good morning, Dad, she says, kissing me on the cheek. How are you feeling today? I smile, though faintly. A little better. Each day gets a bit easier. Harold loosens his tie and sits on the couch. Glad to hear it. Any plans for the day? I shrug slightly. Maybe a walk in the park. Nothing special. Beatrice bustles around, setting the table for breakfast. "It's a beautiful day for a walk, Dad," she says warmly. As we sit down to eat together, I start to reflect on everything we've been through. The lawsuit was settled, justice was served, though the path to it was far from easy. Clearing my throat, I get their attention. "I've been thinking," I begin, and Harold and Beatrice pause, looking at me. "About all of this. About your mother, about Michael, about the trial, about everything." Harold's face darkens. "Dad, you don't have to—" I raise my hand to stop him. "No, I need to say this." Taking a deep breath, I continue. "I know this past year has been incredibly hard on both of you, losing your mother, discovering her betrayal. I just want you to know how much your support has meant to me." Beatrice's eyes fill with tears. "Oh, Dad," she whispers. Despite the emotions swirling inside me, I manage to keep my voice steady. "When I woke up in that hospital room, I thought my life was over. But you two, you never gave up. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Harold leans forward, sincerity etched on his face. "Of course we fought, Dad. You're our father. We couldn't let that scumbag Michael get away with what he did." I nod, feeling the weight of everything we've been through together. "Yes, and you can't even imagine how much that means to me. But it's not just about that. You weren't just there. You helped me heal, gave me a reason to keep moving forward." Beatrice moved a little closer, her hand gently squeezing mine. "We love you, Dad. We're family, and that means we stick together no matter what." I squeezed her hand in return, feeling warmth spreading through my body, and it had nothing to do with the coffee. "I love both of you more than words can express." We sat in silence for a while, sharing an unspoken understanding of everything we'd been through. Harold broke the silence with a soft cough, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "You know, Dad, since you're feeling better, maybe it's time for you to step back out into the world. Rumor has it the ladies at the senior center are showing a lot of interest in you." I laughed, surprised by how natural it felt. "Harold Thompson, are you seriously trying to set up a date for your old man?" Beatrice laughed too, giving her brother a light slap on the arm in mock annoyance. "Stop it, Harold. Dad's doing just fine on his own, right, Dad?" I shook my head, still smiling. "For now, yes. Who knows what the future holds?" As we finished breakfast, the conversation flowed easily, and I was filled with a deep sense of peace. The betrayal, the lawsuits, the media frenzy, all of that was behind us now. What mattered was this moment, here and now, with my children beside me. Later, after Harold and Beatrice left for work, I found myself standing in front of the bedroom mirror. My hair had turned a little grayer, and there were more wrinkles on my face. But my eyes, they were clear and confident, full of strength. I thought about Patricia, about the life we had lived, and how it had all fallen apart. The anger that had once consumed me had finally faded, replaced by quiet acceptance. She had made her choices, just like Michael, and both had faced the consequences of their actions. Now it was time for me to make my own decisions. I grabbed my jacket and headed out for a walk in the park. The sun was shining brightly. Birds were singing in the trees, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive. As I walked along familiar paths, nodding to neighbors and breathing in the fresh air, it hit me. This wasn't just a new chapter in my life. It was the start of an entirely new story, and I was ready to begin writing it. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.